Longchamps, or the story of how Georgetown became the capital of Guyana. Our story begins on the 18th of October, 1745. The Dutch West India Company established Demerara as a separate colony from Essequibo. Fast forward to 1776, and our rebellious neighbor to the north decided that it was high time to introduce a little freedom to the New World, thus triggering the American Revolution. This war drew battle lines across Europe. In fact, the French sent troops, ships, and even military commanders to help the Americans fight the British. No, not for any love of America or freedom or anything like that, but rather to spite England, a country that they've hated since the Norman invasion hundreds of years before. Look it up. Some countries stayed neutral in this whole conflict, so they were left alone. But when Holland decided to sell weapons to the Americans, the British declared war on them, thus triggering the Fourth Anglo-Dutch War. Seeing as this is the fourth, clearly they've had beef for quite some time. Basically, to put it bluntly, it was less of a war, and it was more like a 4-year robbery spree against Dutch colony. Their colonies were poorly defended, and the British knew this. They were very aware of this. In fact, the British had been eyeing up the Dutch possessions in the New World for so long that Admiral Lord Rodney immediately attacked the islands of St. Eustace, Saba, and St. Martin the second he received the declaration of war. His island looting campaign was so swift and so successful that many of the people he attacked didn't even know that a war was declared. Historians still ridicule Rodney for this action and his blatant and terrible anti-Semitism, but that's another story. After Rodney was done pillaging the poor merchants of St. Eustace, in February 1781, he then set his sights on Demerara. On February 27th, 2 warships triumphantly entered the harbor and took the colony without firing a shot. That's because the colonists had basically surrendered already. That's because 6 days prior, the crew of 6 British privateer ships got the same idea as Rodney and decided to have their own colony jacking spree and basically raided the colony and its naval defenses. So, seeing as there was basically no resistance from the Dutch, the British immediately put Lieutenant General Robert Kingston in charge, and he hastily ordered the construction of Fort St. George and several administrative buildings at the mouth of the Demerara River in hopes of securing their newly captured land. At the same time, the capital of this colony was on Borrelsen Island, the Dutch colony we're speaking of, and that was several miles up the Demerara River. The Dutch originally rejected the idea of even settling on the coastland because even back then, they could tell that the coastland was prone to massive flooding. But the British didn't care. They just wanted to put something down as soon as possible. A year later, on February 2nd, 1782, England's old enemy, France, crashed the party and kicked them out. Immediately, the French set about to build the tiny settlement into a full port town. And so building they did. And by they, I mean the enslaved Africans the French forced to build it. Yeah. So after all that work, the French took one look at this burgeoning settlement by the riverside and declared, "Thy name shall be called Longchamps, Longchamps, Longchamps," which is a terrible name if you ask me. And apparently the colonizers agreed, as later the name was changed to La Nouvelle Ville, which literally means new town, which honestly sucks as a name too, if you ask me. This settlement was bordered by Crowell Street to the north, Hadfield Street to the south, Vlissingen Road to the east, and the Demerara River to the west. So, a year later, after the signing of the Treaty of Paris in 1783, the Dutch got their colony back. Yay, good for them. Seeing this nice little town the French left them with, they decided to make it the new capital instead of Borrelsen Island, and they renamed La Nouvelle Ville into Stabroek after Nicholas Gleenvik, Lord of Stabroek and president of the Dutch West India Company at the time. They greatly expanded the town's drainage system and arranged the streets into the rectangular pattern we recognize today. And by they, again, I mean the enslaved Africans the Dutch now forced to work. By 1789, the town had a population of 780 residents. By 1796, the French and the British were at war again. Yes, those Europeans love to fight. So the British, being the British, naturally saw this as another opportunity for colony robbery. That same year, an expeditionary force recaptured Demerara, yet again, without firing a single shot. So, this is because Holland was too busy being invaded by France at the time. They couldn't put up much of a resistance in the New World to the British. So the Brits left the local Dutch administration of the colony relatively uninterrupted because they didn't pose a threat to their money. Yet, both Berbice and the United Colony of Demerara and Essequibo were under external British control from 1796 to 1802, but the Treaty of Amiens in 1802 demanded the British return it to Holland, which they did, only for England to seize it yet again when England and France resumed fighting less than a year later. In 1812, the capital of this colony was officially renamed Georgetown after King George III of England, while the original town of Stabroek and the surrounding settlements became wards of the newly renamed capital of the colony of Essequibo, Demerara. That is the story of how Georgetown, or Longchamps, came to be. So if you like that story, let us know in the comments below. I mean, hey, even if you thought it was crap, let us know too. So let us know how to improve it. And in fact, if you think you did it so great and you have more that you want to contribute, how about you go and hit up our website, ftcguyana.com. There we continue the conversation that we're having here about Guyanese history, culture, arts, and of course, entrepreneurship. And also on our website, we have merchandise. Yes, great merchandise like this shirt that you see me wearing right here. You too can look fly like me by getting you a For the Culture Guyana shirt only at ftcguyana.com. And as always, if you're learning the history about your country and just how odd and warlike those European colonies and the colonists can be, you're doing it for the culture.